watching Storyboard's coverage of the Cannes Lions. I'm Pavni Mittal. One of the themes that emerged at the 62nd International Festival of Creativity was of disruptive innovation, of existing categories, of creativity, of technology, and of course communication. It was also the topic at a panel discussion put together by MSL Group and PRWeek US that I had the opportunity and honor of moderating. Here's what panelists from companies like Mars, Mondelez, Blippar, Uber, Leo Burnett and MSL Group had to say about what drives disruptive innovation in their respective fields and companies. Where do you see most of disruptive ideas coming from today? Is it from agencies like yours and Judy's, or is it from new companies, or is it from established companies?
Sure. I think that disruption and disruptive ideas are coming from anyone who is following what consumers are doing. I have, there's so many great examples, but one that I witnessed last week, I was in New York City. They had the Forbes Women's Summit, and there were so many great business women and politicians on stage talking about wonderful things that they're doing, but there were also two millennial women who were former producers at a US TV show called The Today Show. It's like a morning news program. And they were millennials, and they realized that their friends, their family that were at the millennial stage, were not watching their morning news. And they're like, gosh, this seems so strange. The news isn't what it used to be. And they realized that their friends, the millennials, had habits where instead of wanting to sit and watch the morning news, which they didn't find as useful anymore, they would roll over in the morning, pick up their phone, skim their emails. So these two former producers decided to create a service now called the Skim. And you may not have heard of it, but trust me, you will, because it's growing fast enough that they have millions of subscribers and it's going global.
But Judy, coming to you, what does disruptive innovation mean in your business in a multimedia world?
Well, I think it's more important than ever to be, creatively disruptive in communications and advertising, because people now have a choice of what they're taking in, and they can ignore you and they can swipe you away. And so we are, we're really challenged, and we have to find more creative ways to get them to watch something or listen to us or engage with us. Okay,
Gareth, I want to ask you, so what makes disruption innovative, and what makes innovation disruptive?
It's a really good question, because I don't think the two terms are necessarily synonymous. You can get disruption that isn't innovative and innovation that need not be disruptive. Actually, disruption is quite a scary word for a lot of people. Unless you're the one doing the disruption, it's quite an off-putting. That fear can drive a lot of different types of behavior. It can motivate people to do more, do better, do faster. It can equally create a stagnation of people who don't want to change, who want to resist that. And I think if you look at the great innovation of the last 10, 20 years, often there have been platforms for even greater innovation on top of that. I mean, Uber is often described as a disruptive organization. But actually, the disruption was the smartphone. It was the smartphone that enabled people, wherever they are, to summon a taxi, essentially, at the dial of their fingertips. And to whether or not that's disruptive, innovative, or both, it ultimately depends on what the consumer wants.
I think that in many instances, I think that the clues for disruptive opportunities come from user behavior, but actually in some they don't. And people don't know what they don't know. And so I think that there is a whole piece around throwing things out there and seeing what sticks. And then usually what happens is you look back and you can see the evidence for it in the fringes, but actually, frankly, in terms of going forwards, it's taking a bold step.
Okay. And what drives disruptive innovation in established companies like yours?
Well, I think ultimately any disruptive innovation in established markets is about step-changing category growth, not just brand share. And when we look at what drives category growth, fundamentally it's about driving penetration. And the way we approach disruptive innovation is we say, what are the barriers to penetration, be they consumer or shopper, and we try and address those. And for a market like chocolate, which is fundamentally an impulse category, one of the biggest disruptions we can make is people are just not thinking about chocolate. It's not top of mind. So actually, disruption of communication can be a massive growth driver, a category growth driver as well as a brand growth driver, which is where some of our biggest innovation have been communications ideas like You're Not You When You're Hungry, on Snickers, which fundamentally rejuvenated an 80-year-old brand and sort of drove double-digit category busting growth for 5 years running. So that's how we think of disruptive innovation. It's got to be category driving.
You know, I would agree with that. From a business perspective, I think really what is driving innovation in our company is high school students, I got to tell you. Like we invite high school students in, and the room and the energy changes completely. I mean, it's just as simple as that. When you look at talent and you start to realize that, yes, our most important asset is brands. And to be honest, brands is not chocolate. Brands is not gum. Brands is not biscuits. Brands is people.
Right.
It's just as simple as that. Right now we have programs that we're paying high school students not to go to college. I'm sorry, but I think the education
Where were you
system,
when I was in high school?
I think the education system is not working. And I'm a teacher at universities on my free time. I enjoy it more than ever. And I realize you start to look at the curriculum of a marketing course, how many mobile marketing courses you've seen, how many SEOs programs you've seen within an MBA. I mean, the pace of education is not keeping up, but the pace that consumers, and especially high school students, are developing. And they are really disrupting our approach to communications, our approach to how we understand products.
How do you then challenge norms? Because what you're talking about is quite game-changing, and for companies that are as established, if I may call it, at yours, how challenging is it?
I mean, it's never been a better moment in history of marketing to work in media. I actually think I have the best job in the world. The thing is, right now, the moment that you show a piece of content, and if I show you 3 pieces of content and you consume one, I already know something about you. So it's actually quite easy for me to segment you. So the moment that you start to look at content as a driver of that, the moment that you consume content in digital platforms, I already can target you based on your interests. So, and this is why programmatic buying is completely changing the rules of the game, because we can target and we know exactly who is consuming what, then we know what their interests, and we can adapt the content to them.
What drives disruptive innovation at Uber? Is it the fear of not being able to get home?
As in the last 24 hours, Uber has facilitated 1 million trips around the world somewhere. We're in 313 different cities in over 50 countries. You know, yet at the same time, we're now at a stage where a lot of the individuals are being hired in markets that have never been to San Francisco. They've never met the chief executive. And that's a strange cultural change that an organization such as Uber is now going through. So how do we sustain that desire, that entrepreneurial spirit, if you will? We are very much from the ground up. When we go into a new city, we put people physically in the ground. They are employees who are trying to grow their own businesses. And we hire incredible graduates, people who have got MBAs from some of the top colleges around the world. And so these are all kind of alpha personalities who really want to succeed. And that tension between how do you have a brand that's perceived as being homogenous. Uber, what happens on one side of the world, creates news on the other, despite the fact they're vastly different businesses. And yet, how do you sustain that drive to grow businesses locally? And that's something that I think we're now in the process of trying to work through.
When you ideate and work with clients, when do you realize that you hit upon an idea that's disruptive, that's innovative, and where do you look for inspiration?
I would agree. I think that there's never been a closer relationship between the technology companies and marketers than there is today. And part of your question, Pavni, was how do you know when you hit disruption? I think one indication is when you become part of the vernacular. Like people talk about, they've been Uberized or whatever. One of the brands that I've worked with is Netflix, and if you look at how that technology has driven consumer habits, there's this notion of people kind of consuming a lot of TV together, consuming a lot of entertainment together, or calling up and talking to their friends about the entertainment that they saw, or just maybe getting together and binging. Well, that could have been a negative term, but when you work with companies that are disruptive and you can turn that narrative into something positive. I mean, we were able to take binge watching and make it something that people are proud of now. Like, many of you may have binge watched on Orange is the New Black recently, I don't know. But I think once the brand and some of the words to describe the brand become part of the vernacular, I think you've kind of hit it.
Okay. You know, you're in technology and that's a very, very competitive space. So how do you stay ahead of the curve? Because, you know, there is a new tech company being found by an Indian in Silicon Valley every week.
Well, I guess the glib answer to that actually is that technology isn't, in my view, disruptive. Business models are.
Okay.
And if you look at the journey that Blippar has been on, the technology has shifted several times, but actually the business model continues to develop. If you look at, you know, Uber, for instance, actually one might argue that the tech was available already, and what they've done is configured it in a really smart way in a business model that's killed it. Well, that's massively disruptive. Let's say, no fear for everyone else. Actually, if you look at the roadmap that we're on, I think that there's a new model that's emerging to do with media, and actually beyond that, there are other models as well that we're planning. And frankly, that's the way to do it, is to be clear about how you make money.
Clients ask for innovation. I wouldn't even say a lot of clients, I would say some clients ask for innovation. And then, because they want to see the ideas, but then they don't know how to buy innovation because there are no benchmarks and there are no, you know, things to compare to, or you know, how do we guarantee this and what's the ROI on it? I don't know, because it's innovation, it's new.
We're talking, you know, smartphones and wearables, and I've seen you've got one, you've got both. Both of you, what has all this technological disruption and innovation done to your business?
I think that it enables greater creative thought. I think that there's more options to explore. I think there's new ways to look at things. I think that it's fueling brands to be more courageous. I know that there's still a little bit of trepidation, but with all of the opportunities that technology is allowing for now, why wouldn't you experiment more to see what will best serve the consumer? So I think it's great for anyone who's in a communications consultancy environment.
But what about keeping legacies alive? Because you're the custodian of many legacy brands, so how do you do that?
See, when I go to the airport and I go to Mumbai and they ask me which company you work for, I say Cadbury. If I go to the US and go through the customs, I say Kraft. And same thing for Germany with Milka. Yes, the brands at the heart are the key drivers of the change. But when you're building through legacy, you're talking about popular culture, you can't really ignore what consumers are talking about. And when we did the Super Bowl tweet on the tweet in the dark, and of course the way you do that is you have a whole team and a war room just prepared of looking at data reported by Canary and looking at what are the things that are trending, what are the deltas, and then how can we influence on the things that are peaking. At the same time, really at the heart of it is creative link to culture. Creativity is so fundamental. We look at media ROI, and when you look at media ROI, and you know what the number one variable that correlates with media ROI is the size of your brand.
Okay.
If you have $1 billion brand and you put $1 in, more likely you're going to get much more money back. The next variable, the one that you can really control, because the size of your brand you can't, is creativity. Okay. The moment you put it into culture, the moment you put it into social, that has an exponential effect. I think one of the saddest trends that have happened in the past 3 years is the moment that we started, by some of the companies, blue being the logo associated with it, shifting the conversation from engagement to reach. I think the conversation in reach is fundamental. You do need to understand what is the reach and what is the unduplicated reach of your channels. But what it does in most of the marketers, not all of them, but in most of the marketers, is stop thinking about creativity and start thinking about just buying the space to put it up. The way we're looking at it is like we're trying to reshape our marketing teams to think from borrowing content and paying for the content to producing the content and being content creators. And I think, because the truth of the matter is that right now there's too much fragmentation. So there's the only opportunity is to create monetization of the content that you're producing.
You know, Uber's done some interesting things in marketing. You know, you've had kittens that are involved. You've ferried Valentine's Day roses, and then comes back to from transactional to what you were talking about, trust and emotion. So how important is creative disruption for a company that is already disruptive?
Every day, there is an opportunity for us to screw up somewhere.
I've experienced that.
With over 1 million trips, every day, how many thousands of people in each city there are, the variables are huge, and yet there's this homogenous Uber brand sitting over the top of it that everyone kind of relates to. I think I think we need to, in an organization such as that, it's to your point about having a direct dialogue, having a relationship with those customers. And sometimes it can be really creative, fun ideas. We can get incredibly serious, I think, far too easily within an organization such as Uber when there are so many critics and so many people who are fearful of the disruption that Uber brings to the table. Actually, a little bit of lightheartedness, and just to be absolutely clear, we didn't give kittens away. We were just delivering kittens so people have a little stroke and then could bring them back again, just to be absolutely clear on that. Just a little bit of lightheartedness helps ensure that there is that ongoing dialogue. If the touch point with our brand is a person who isn't even an employee of the brand, then it's even more important that we have a dialogue with them and that they can talk to us and that they can relate to us.
Yeah, we've got all these clients talk about new technology and how they need to keep pace with it, and Joseph pointed out we still need to do more. How do you as agencies keep pace with all that?
The way we treat the agency model is just not, I don't think we've been conscious enough of how much strangling fees and reducing fees what has happened is that all of a sudden it doesn't leave you a lot of leeway to bring innovation from outside.
Oh
Everything has to be sold and produced.
She's really good.
But I do think that we need to be conscious when we starting to think about the agency model. We should be conscious that not 100% of the solutions will be part of the agency, and you need to be bringing solutions that are not part of your P&L, and you should be comfortable with it. But at the same time, we should be making sure that you make enough money so that you can bring those solutions, as opposed to blowing the whole system.
Oh my God, it's on film. This is terrific.
You can quote me on that.
I'd like to build on that because honestly, at Mars, I mean, we know the power of creativity to make a difference to our top and bottom line, and that's why we chose an agency model where we have long-term strategic partnerships, where we compensate our agencies so that when we grow, they grow. We do not regularly, chop and change agencies at all. In fact, I mean, I've got two of my BBDO colleagues in the room, and they've been on the business for over a decade, and we know that talent and continuity makes a massive difference.
But is there a lot of collaboration taking place between advertising agencies and PR agencies, and how is that working out?
Oh yes,
because you've had to do things that you didn't have to do when you started your career.
Oh, definitely. So, unlike a girl, we partnered with MSL, and we did research together. They were at the shoot, and it is really important to work with the different partners and bring in those skill sets and to build these big complicated campaigns. You need one another.
Yeah, but it's not only these guys. You've also now started playing a part. Is that difficult to convince them that you're important as well, and you also need to make money?
Well, what's really interesting actually is when you're the other woman, let's say.
Yeah, you're the other woman.
We're obviously we're a tech company, a platform in scale-up mode, and I guess what really helps is having a few agency folks like myself at the platform, which means that we can be very flexible and work around the way that different brands, different businesses need to work, and the agencies in the middle, making sure everyone gets value and a great outcome results. And I guess one of the things about us is that because we're a technology business, everything's in beta always. So actually, it's natural to adjust how we operate constantly. And actually, having worked in corporate businesses in the past, not client side, but brand side, but large agencies, is that I think that they are very risk averse, and frankly, Blippar, if something is more than 80% right and you push further, you're wrong. You have to just publish 80% and then iterate from there.
Start from the client side, where do you think the next big disruptive idea will come from?
I think we owe to ourselves to bridge the gap. We need to be very mindful of the gap that exists between how consumers use media and how we use media. And I'm sorry, but it's just changed. When you look at the trend on the past 4 years of the time spent on digital channels and the time spent on TV, and when you look at each one of you and you look at your media plans and look at your media mix, whether you've bridged the gap or not. So you should be shifting very rapidly on how consumers are using technology versus how we're using technology. So what I expect is a huge revolution on pieces of content that are developed in a way that helps us bridge the gap on how consumers are behaving with media and how we are buying with media. No longer 30-second ads, no longer buying a piece of content and streaming it. More and more what we're doing is like the Vine that works better, that's what we're using as a TV ad.
You know, e-commerce was the buzzword a few years ago. It's going to be m-commerce. And I think for all FMCG companies, we need to look east, because many things that happen in the East are going to leapfrog what's happening in the West, and we need to really bring that shopping behaviour revolution, I guess, ready our business model for it, because it's a business model question.
My view is that while mobile is the current kind of disruptive technology, the next one is computer vision and machine learning. And basically that's the wave that Blippar's riding on, the notion that computers can see and perceive, and that when embedded into wearables will become will entirely shape and enhance how we connect with the world, with brands, with each other. And so I think Blippar's the future of disruptive innovation.
Uber of everything. I think there's also the north-south change, which is, you've got an entire continent in Africa which hasn't had, for example, established telecommunications networks who've gone straight to mobile. And like in Asia as well, they're leapfrogging many of the technologies that in many respects are holding back some parts of the Western world because of established ways of working. And if there is a can-do attitude, then certainly I'm seeing it in Nairobi, I'm seeing it in Lagos, I'm seeing it in places all over the place, which will mean that there's probably going to be an Uber for whatever.
Okay, so what is going to be the Uber for the advertising business?
That's what I love about the business, is that you don't know. It can come from anywhere, and it could be the next product like the iWatch or the wearables that we're talking about. It could be the Ice Bucket Challenge, where it came from 3 families and they decided to do something, and that was hugely disruptive. And it could be how we use innovation. And something I saw was the Samsung safety truck. Putting the TV screens on the backs of transport trucks, so you can see, the oncoming traffic and know when to pass safely. It's creativity is everywhere, and that's what's exciting about the business.
Okay. Ready?
So from a public relations perspective, I think because PR is very good at going niche and very targeted, I think that our storytelling is going to become much more personalized. So personalized to the influencers that we reach out to, and then personalized to specific networks. I think just because of what we're learning more and more about consumers via data, we're going to be able to be much more personalized in how we communicate messaging for our clients.
Some great insights there from the world's most disruptive and innovative companies. I'd also like to thank PRWeek US and MSL Group, not just for inviting me, but also for putting together an esteemed panel and choosing a topic like disruptive innovation. With that, we've come to the end of today's show. Do send us your comments and feedback. We're on Facebook and Twitter. And remember, you can catch up on all our content on YouTube as well. I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.